New Orleans Saints are on their bye week, but we don't take time off here at the Saints Insider Podcast. We are here on Wednesday, November the 15th. Zach Ewing with Rod Walker and Luke Johnson. We're going to have 2 full episodes for you this week, just like always, and plenty to talk about in Saints land. So let's hop right into it. We'll have some injury updates, guys. We'll have maybe a rehash of the Vikings game. I'm sure people are really excited about hearing about that.
Yeah.
And then we'll go into some more big picture stuff, some report cards for the Saints offensive and defensive units. And we're going to look at the NFL as a whole, a bye week look. Today we'll start with the NFC. Today we'll start with the AFC. Friday we will do the NFC. So let's jump into it, Luke. Chance to rewatch the Vikings game. Anything else stick out to you as far as just an atrocious first half and not enough in the second?
So I think one of the things that stood out was they tried to do something different defensively. They tried putting a spy on Josh Dobbs because they know that they've been terrible at containing opposing quarterbacks that are mobile, guys who can run like Dobbs. And to do that, they had to play like a little bit less man coverage than they usually do, play a little bit more zone, and the whole thing just backfired. Spy didn't work. They couldn't bring Dobbs down when they had him contained in the pocket. And then his mobility allowed him to extend plays and let guys like T.J. Hawkinson consistently find holes in the zone. It was just, at least they tried something. Yeah, and they tried to change what has kind of been a really disturbing trend for them with these really slow starts in the first half. It just didn't work. One of the things that I remember talking to guys after the game, Tyrann Matthews, like, hey, if we want to turn around these slow starts, we got to make the big plays early. Paulson Adebo, who I think has been really, really good. I think he's their defensive MVP this year. But he had a chance. He had a chance to make the sort of game-changing play that Tyrann's talking about. Early in that game, he made a great break on the ball. He had a chance to intercept the pass from Dobbs, kind of stem their early tide there. Who knows what would have happened if he made the play. Instead, it bounces kind of off his hands, pops up in the air, and Jordan Addison catches it for, I think, a 27-yard gain. It's stuff like that where they need to be in these positions to make these huge plays. Otherwise, they've kind of crumble like they did in the first half of that game.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that play, and the Saints didn't have a takeaway. And it was
I think it was their first game this year without a takeaway.
It was one of those games, too, and we say it almost every week. It is important every week, but getting off to a good start in that game, I think, would have made a huge difference, where if you're playing with a lead, forcing Josh Dobbs and the Vikings into comeback mode, Rod, like, that game is completely different.
Yeah, and I know last week, just leading into the game, we talked about the keys to the game, and that was definitely one of them. We just thought that, I think Luke and I, we were the ones who picked the Vikings to win. But one of the things I thought is just they need to get ahead. They need to get that crowd out of the game. And you just kind of saw it coming. Like once, I think they drove and kicked the field goal on open possession.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, they made it look pretty easy. And you just saw Dobbs doing some things, and you were like, okay, this is going to be another one of those days. And it was. And they just almost didn't have any answers for him. I mean, he made the defensive lineman look really slow. I mean, they'd be right there, and he'd just spin out of it or just do something crazy, and they just couldn't contain him. And, again, we've seen this time and time again with this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing more frustrating for a defense than a quarterback who can get himself out of trouble. I mean, I will say I think Jeff Duncan called it last week when I brought up the possibility of a spy on Dobbs, and he said, the Saints are probably better off just doing what they do. They do it well, let him have a few yards. And sometimes you kind of get mixed up in the head when you're struggling and you make changes that you didn't need to make.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that. But at the same time, I at least applaud them for trying something different defensively. Just because this has been such a consistent problem for them over the years, especially this year. I haven't gone back and looked over the numbers again since I wrote that story last week, but they've got to be top or bottom 3 still in the NFL in rushing yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks, if not worse. 6 quarterbacks have run for 30-plus yards on them now after Dobbs did it, which, doesn't seem like a lot, but those 30 yards are usually pretty big yards. They're usually moving the chains, and usually when guys are running and they're getting free like that, that also means that not every time it's a running play, and not every time it's the quarterback running. It's a quarterback getting free and extending plays and hitting the bigger plays downfield. So Yes, I'm with you. Generally speaking, I like seeing teams do what they do well and sticking with it and making it simple. I think that's generally a better path towards success. But because they've had so many problems with it, it was good to see them try something new, even if it didn't work.
And these aren't even elite quarterbacks we're talking about, which is, to me, what makes it even worse. I mean, this wasn't Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson. These are just, these are a lot of backup quarterbacks have done this, and it doesn't really matter who it is. If you can do that, you're going to give this team trouble.
Yeah, I mean, you like to look ahead, and we will probably more on Friday's podcast, but okay, Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke, whoever the Falcons start, doesn't scare you. The rest of the quarterbacks on the slate aren't really mobile guys. But it hasn't seemed to matter. I mean,
Ritter can move around, though. Ritter can move around.
That's true. He can't throw.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't have to be that's the thing is I don't think you have to be this great rhythm passer, guy who's dropping these dimes all over the place. Like if you can move around on this defense and if you can extend plays, there are going to be guys who are open. And that's been the problem. And I think Ritter, if he's going to be the guy, I think he could give them some problems like that. He especially as a runner.
Yeah,
they could have a long day against him when they come back to the field next week.
And Luke mentions guys being open. I mean, you look at T.J. Hockenson; he was open all game long. I mean, just wide open in the middle of the field, and that's what happened.
I think he's still popping open in Dennis Allen's dreams at this point. It's just one play after the other. Second half, we talked a lot about it on the postgame show on Sunday, but the Saints play hard. I mean, they keep playing hard. They've never quit this year. That's not been a problem. And they've made adjustments, and Jameis Winston comes in and gives them a spark and then kind of takes it away and does what Jameis does. But the big story of the second half for me is the injuries. Michael Thomas got injured in the first half, but you lose Derek Carr, you lose Marshon Lattimore. We kind of got an update from DA on Monday. It sounds like Carr would have a chance to come back for Atlanta. The other two probably less of a chance.
Yeah, you never want to hear the word significant when you're talking about injuries. In Dennis Allen vocabulary, that's usually not a good word to hear. So, I don't know. Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see a little bit on this. Yeah, obviously with the bye week, it comes at a good time, but if you're looking for information on these things, they're going to take their time to really suss it out. So I don't feel great about those guys' status for next week's game in Atlanta and maybe even a little bit beyond that, especially if it is a high ankle sprain for Marshon Lattimore. I talked to somebody. They said they're it's not conclusive. They're doing more tests on it, but that's something that could keep him out for a month.
Yeah,
it could keep him out for a while.
It's 4 to 6 weeks usually a high ankle sprain.
Yeah,
so.
And he's obviously one of their best players, and things change when he's in the game, even if he's not making a bunch of plays. They were able to weather the storm earlier this year when Adebo was out. I thought Yadam played really, really good football opposite Lattimore as the outside corner. They were able to keep Alontae Taylor on the inside. But taking Lattimore out changes things. It really does.
We've talked all season long about how healthy this team has been, and now you're down two of your biggest stars on the team, and Carr would be out if they were playing this week, but fortunately, they have a bye week, so that buys him some more time. But yeah, it's huge for a team that's where they are, at this point of the season with the schedule and how pivotal this Falcons game is coming up.
Yeah, and even next week, you talk about concussion protocol. It can be a week, it can be a month. I mean, we saw usually this is the case if it's a second concussion in the same season, but it can end your season. I mean, you just never know how the brain is going to react to these injuries.
Yeah, you can never take it for granted that it's a 1 week thing. A lot of times it is a week, but you can never take that for granted. So it's going to be something we have to keep a close eye on next week and kind of even throughout this week, just maybe gauge his progress because you just never know. I mean, the Saints have had guys miss multiple weeks with a concussion. I think Taysom Hill did a couple years ago. I think Ryan Ramczyk might have missed multiple games with a concussion. Or maybe James Hurst was one of those two. So it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to be out there for the Falcons game for sure.
All right, so I think that wraps a bow on the Vikings. Obviously not what the Saints wanted. Leaves them at 5-5. They'll go to Atlanta after the bye week in really what's just a huge game, and we'll talk more about this on Friday's show. But it's the same old thing for the Saints. They're treading water, but so are the Falcons, and so are the Bucs, and Panthers are worse than that. And so, look, if you can still at the point where if you can string a couple wins together, you can go where you want to go, even if it doesn't feel right.
What does it mean though?
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, it's like nobody is going to care about this division title if they don't start looking like the team they have the potential to be, right? Like if they go 9-8 and win the division and make the playoffs and host a playoff game, like people are going to be amped up for the playoff game for sure. But like, I don't think you can be excited about the prospects of this team. It's like they've got to start looking like the team that they think they can be, and if they can't get there, even if they go to the playoffs, if they kind of backdoor it with playing in this bad division and winning games against teams they should beat. I mean, you gotta look at what you're doing and who's doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think making the playoffs is good enough for this team. To me, it just means you won a division because you just happen to be in there with 3 other really bad teams. And if you just get in the playoffs and get blown out by whoever in the first round, I mean, I don't think that's enough. That's not what this team was supposed to do.
I mean, I think the thing that I would say is like, if they go like 5-2 down the stretch, right? Like the coaches are back in the facility this week, and they're really taking a close look at what they're doing, and they're like, okay, look, we got to scrap this, and this. We are constantly getting behind in these games, and the only time we see signs of life out of our offense is when we're digging out of a 15-point hole. Okay, so let's scrap all this crap. And like, what are we doing when we are in desperation mode that we can apply writ large to our offense? All right, and let's say they find this spark and they start looking like the team we think they. And then if they get to the playoffs and they lose their first game, like fine, but at least you showed me. At least you showed me like at some point in that season that you were capable of being who we all think you are and who you think you are. But if it looks the way it did for the first 10 games over these last 7 games, and they sneak into the playoffs and they get housed by the Cowboys or whatever, then yeah, like, look, make some tough decisions.
It's like you got an award for being in a bad division at that point,
Right.
and who wants that?
And I don't know if 5-2 is good with the schedule they have left. I mean, they still don't have any good teams left on the schedule, really. I mean, you got
the Lions.
Well, there's style points.
Yeah, you have Detroit.
And there's style points that count too. If they've gone 5-5 beating some bad teams, but they've squeaked out some games against bad teams, right? And they blew a 18-point lead to what we are now seeing as a bad Packers team, right? So like, style points matter. And wins and losses are the only thing that really matters. But like when you're talking about like, do we need to make huge organizational changes? I think style points do matter, because then you're like, okay, like they went out and beat the Panthers 37-10, or the Giants, who are constantly getting blown out this year, right? But if they go and play the Giants, they get the win, but they win on a Blake Griffey walk-off field goal or something like that. That changes things. Even though the win is all that matters, really, when you're talking about like the future of the organization, like those things actually do matter, because you can say like, okay, well, yeah, they won, but like if they were playing not the Giants, would they have won?
They show the long-term health of the organization versus just what they are in the standings this year. So, speaking of what the Saints are doing right, what they're doing wrong, I want to do some report card stuff. We did some last week for midseason, but we'll get a little more in-depth today. First of all, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up button right below the screen here, or a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate that from all of you. And also want to let you know that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Okay, report card. Luke, we're going to start with the offense, and you wrote that this morning. It's on NOLA.com. Kind of broke it up: offensive line, quarterbacks, skill players. How do you grade this team on offense? Be as rough as you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think nobody gets anything above a C. I think I had the passing offense at a C because it's shown some flashes of being good. It just hasn't been consistent nearly enough, right? Like the flashes have been like fourth quarter got to have it moments, even back to like week 1, right? Hitting the 40-yard bomb at the end to close it out and ice it out, where it wasn't really there the whole game. Like you see the moments, but like I think the biggest problem to me, and this is I gave the rushing attack a D. I gave the offensive whole as a C minus. The biggest problem to me is this offensive line has not played up to anywhere even remotely near its potential. Got 4 top 50 picks in the starting offensive line right now, and the other one is James Hurst, who you've brought back for I think 2 contracts now. So those guys you should rightly depend to or rightly expect to protect the quarterback in a decent manner to open holes for the running game because you've put tons of resources into this. The running game right now, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill are all averaging career lows in yards per carry. These guys have all been in the league since 2017. Kendra Miller, your rookie running back who you drafted in the 3rd round, is clearly an explosive player. We've seen it. He's averaging, I think, like 3 point or maybe even less than 3 yards per carry right now. That we've seen them have mass problems in pass protection. 17 sacks in the first 6 games of the season, I think, 5 games of the season. It's just it hasn't been good enough, and I think that's had these cascading effects on the rest of the team where Derek Carr is not a good enough quarterback to overcome no running game and no pass protection. And then you've seen these other issues start cropping up where he doesn't have time and he's getting rid of the ball too soon, or even when he does have time, he's like so used to being pressured where he's getting rid of the ball too soon. They've had bad communication between him and the receivers. Chris Olave, I don't think, has played up to his potential this year. Even beyond the Derek Carr stuff, you've seen bad body language from these guys. So, like, I don't see like how they could be any better than a C right now. I might be even
I think you're
little
being a little generous.
A little generous with the C for even the passing attack.
I got to say, and my brain is fried. Forgive me because I was thinking you had split it up by positions. It's been a long day already, but you did it by passing versus rushing. But I think if you do split it up by positions, Rod, like you might be generous to give this offensive line a D, because Luke's talking about the rushing attack. It's been abysmal. The problems in the passing game when they crop up, it's because Derek Carr or Jameis Winston has been under pressure. They've been sacked a ton. There's been turnovers because of that. Like I'm not trying to say no one else is at fault here, but that offensive line, when it's not right, it's hard for anything else to be right.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line was, the first 6 weeks of the season, you definitely give them an F probably. I thought they were really, really bad those first 6 weeks. Carr couldn't stay up right for anything. So, that it starts with them, and they just haven't. And that's most of this offensive struggles are because of that, which is what Luke was pointing out. And they haven't been good. And there was a 2 or 3 week stretch where they played better. I think that may have been Carr getting rid of the ball faster and them giving some help, chipping and all that stuff to help them out. But they just haven't been what we thought they were going to be. And that's something we haven't talked about in years. We always thought the offensive line was, probably the most, one of the most reliable units on this team, and they just haven't been that this season at all. It's
a bedrock foundational piece of their offense is strong offensive line play. And when that has not gone the way they want it to, it has crumbled. I looked this up this morning. Through 10 games, the Saints are averaging 4.96 yards per play and 21.4 points per game. 4.96 is the lowest yards per play this team has mustered through 10 games since 2000.
Wow.
This is going back to even like some of the Hazlitt teams. Even the 2005 team was averaging more yards per play. What was last year's
number?
It's like 5.3.
Okay, so they're
not even close.
That's a decent chunk below.
Last year's team was actually better than the 2021 team in terms of yards per play through 10 games. Again, this is not over the full season. This is through 10 games. This is to this point of the season. And then 21.4 points per game, 214 points through 10 games. That's the lowest since 2007, Drew Brees' second year here. So, I mean, we're talking about this is through this stage of the season, arguably the worst offense they've had in almost 20 years, if not more. I mean, it's not good enough, and I think the offensive line play has a big part of that. This is despite the fact that the Saints currently lead the NFL in offensive plays run. Nobody's run more plays than the Saints. Because I mean, the one good thing they've done is they've taken care of the ball, right? They haven't turned the ball over, but they can't do anything once it's in their hands,
especially when it's inside the 20-yard
line.
Yeah, that's been the other kind of third downs and red zone. I mean, they're just not, and that's how you win in the NFL is by winning those plays. Sounds simple, but that's what it comes down to, and they haven't
back
done
to
it.
running the ball. They can't run, so they can force into these third and longs, and then so I mean, it's all tied together.
Or when you get inside that 5-yard line, you got to get real creative. And to the again, to their credit, we're going to do report cards for coaching on Friday's podcast. We're trying to focus on the players here, but you do have to give some credit for that jumbo formation that worked for a few games there. Now this disappeared in Minnesota, but for a few games there, they were using Taysom Hill more, which is something you've been calling for a long time. So there's been flashes, which is why I think you ended on C-.
Yeah. Like you can see it there. You can like see these just like rare glimpses where you're like, oh, that was awesome, right? And I think they've even tried to get like creative sometimes. They just haven't been able to just consistently do it, and it's maddening. It's maddening for us watching the games on a weekly basis, and all you need to do is troll through our Twitter mentions to see what the Saints fan base thinks about it.
You could just not do that.
You could just not do that.
Use your imagination.
You could just not. It'd probably be better for your mental health.
All right. So that's our segment on the Saints today. We're gonna back things up a little bit and kind of take the bye week as an opportunity to look at the league at large. We'll do the AFC today. We're gonna do the NFC on Friday. Part of the reason for splitting it up like that is there's a big AFC game Thursday night, Bengals and Ravens on Thursday Night Football. So AFC, what surprises you guys? Rod, we'll start with you. And what do you expect going forward?
I think the biggest surprise for me would probably be that the Bengals are in fourth place in the AFC North, and the AFC North has been really good. I mean, that was one point. I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but there was one point where all four of those teams would make the playoffs. That was last week, actually. I haven't looked at the standings for this week.
Yeah, I think the Bengals are. We have the standings up there. They're on the outside looking in right now, but it's like a tiebreaker situation.
Yeah, but last week, all four of those teams were in, so that's been a surprise to me just to see, how they've been. But I do think they'll rebound and do well, especially now that Deshaun Watson is out. So, I mean, Cleveland will probably get leapfrogged in that division by the Bengals. I'm surprised at Buffalo's struggles, especially with them losing to the Broncos the other night. That was pretty shocking. I think Kansas City is the head and shoulders. Well, I won't say head and shoulders, but I think they're probably the best team in the division, although I think Baltimore is also. I'd expect that to be the AFC champion, conference championship game. I think the Jaguars are sneaky good. Like, I don't think people are really talking about them as much, but I think they were 6-2, 7-2.
Yeah.
6-3 now.
6-3 now. They lost to San
after
Francisco.
the San Francisco loss.
Okay. But I think they're a solid team. I do think Trevor Lawrence is pretty good. I think he's, one of the best quarterbacks the Saints have faced this year. And obviously C.J. Stroud's been, I think you can go ahead and give him the Rookie of the Year trophy now. He's been that good. We saw it up close and personal, a few weeks ago. And, I think he's really good. So, but as far as the conference as a whole, I do think Kansas City and Baltimore are probably the best two teams in there right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're more than halfway through the season, Luke, and you can the Chiefs are still leading the AFC. Everybody wants to find a reason to pick against them. This year, their defense has actually been leading them probably more than their offense, but they're still 7-2 in the one seed position. And then, as Rod said, Bengals and Bills would not be in the playoffs if they started today.
Yeah, I think the Bills, I feel like they are what they are. They lost some really talented players on the defense, and their defense has just been kind of atrocious. The funny part about it is, I mean, it's not funny, but they fire their offensive coordinator, and their offense is like basically every metric they're like top 5. It's their problem is that their defense has just not been able to overcome some of these issues. So I think they're kind of toast. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a bad idea for me.
Their schedule's tough, too.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
tough.
that's the thing. Yeah. Their schedule's really tough down the stretch. I think they still got Chiefs, Eagles,
Dolphins again.
Dolphins.
Yeah.
So their schedule's really tough. But, I also just think that they're basically a one-man show right now. I think the Bengals are going to be fine. They got off that really, really rough stretch early in the year. Joe Burrow was hurt. Obviously wasn't playing up to his usual standards, but he's been a lot better lately. I think their loss last week snapped, a 4 or 5 game winning streak, something like that. So I still think they're going to be in the mix. I think they'll probably be in the title game just because I trust what they've done in the postseason the last couple of years. Baltimore, they absolutely pantsed Detroit. They did the same thing to Seattle, and they've had some of the most impressive wins in the NFL this season. And then they go out and I think they were up 17-3 in the first quarter. I think 31-17 in the fourth quarter last week against Cleveland, a team that doesn't have a very good offense. And you're like, oh wow, they're doing it again, and then they kind of blew it. So I don't really know what to make of Baltimore. I still think they're really good, but I don't know if they're the juggernaut that I thought they were. And then Kansas City, I'm gonna feel like an idiot for doubting Patrick Mahomes, even remotely, because the guy is awesome. Probably the best football player of this current generation. But they feel like they just don't have a lot of juice offensively outside of Mahomes and Kelsey. Rashee Rice, their rookie receiver, has done some nice things, but it's the numbers for that offense are not there right now. And I don't know if they have the firepower to go win shootouts in the playoffs if they need to. Their defense has been really solid, really good, but I don't know. I don't know if I trust it the same way I trust that team the same way I've trusted previous iterations of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't know. It's a weird AFC right now where before the year, we're all looking at 10 teams that could be really, really great teams in the AFC, and now you're looking at there's no juggernauts out there. The Chiefs lost to the Broncos. The Bills lost to the Broncos. The Jaguars got smoked by the 49ers. It feels like one of those seasons where we could get a really weird outcome in the playoffs because they're all beatable teams.
You look at these standings we have up on the screen right now, and there's 8 teams between 5-4 and 4-5. And the top of that list right now is the Texans. They're the 7 seed at 5-4. You have the Bengals also 5-4. Bills, mentioned them 5-5. But let's look at these other teams. Leave the Bengals and Bills out of it because I think everybody could see a rebound coming from those teams, even though, as you said, the Bills have a tough schedule. But out of the Texans, Colts, Raiders, Chargers, Jets, and Broncos, and we'll even throw. I'm going to throw the Steelers and Browns in there at 6-3. Because I just, and you're a Steelers fan, Rod, I know, but I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors with both of those teams. Which of those teams are actual contenders in the AFC, if any of them?
Actual contenders?
Could theoretically win the AFC Championship?
I think the real wild card is if the Jets are able to string some wins together, and then Aaron Rodgers really does do the crazy miraculous thing and return from torn Achilles in week 1 in week 15.
If he does that, by the way, a whole bunch of people are going to be doing darkness retreats and crap.
Yeah, but he says he thinks he's on track for a mid-December return. If the Jets can manage to just squeak by and get that number 7 seed, and Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, which is a lot to ask for a 38-year-old quarterback who tore his Achilles 3 months before and has no offensive line in front of him. Granted, but I wouldn't want to bet against that. That defense is awesome.
Nobody would want to play against Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. That goes without saying.
I will say, though, that C.J. Stroud has just completely opened my eyes, and he's got the Texans playing ball and beating some good teams in dramatic fashion. I would not want to face that guy either.
Any love for the Broncos? Back-to-back wins over the Chiefs and Bills?
Not for me. The Bills game, they should not have won.
No.
I know they did
They got
to
4
win.
takeaways
Yeah.
and still barely won it. Yeah.
Still barely won. Got the lucky 12 men on the field at the end to give Will Lutz an extra chance. So I'm not sold on them yet, but I do think they've shown improvement. I mean, this is a team that gave up 70 points in was that week 1 or week 2?
No, it was like
It's
week three.
I think. Yeah.
Okay, well,
But they did not start well. They started 0-3.
They started
yeah.
really bad, and I mean, I think they are trending in the right direction, which you want to see. I mean, we knew Sean Payne would probably go in there and get things turned around, and I mean, to me, I think he's done some things pretty quickly. I mean, they have to be a lot more optimistic than they were at the beginning of the season.
I mean, I could see them sneaking in. I'll say it. Deshaun Watson's out for the season, so you got to downgrade the Browns a little bit. The Texans, can they keep it up?
Can we just say that none of us have even mentioned Miami?
You just said it.
Oh well, I just got to say that they're getting Devon Achane back, their rookie running back, who was awesome before he went on IR. I think that helps their offense out a little bit. Putting a absolute burner in that Mike McDaniel's offense. I think they could make some noise. They felt kind of fraudy against some of the better teams that they've played. They got housed by the Bills.
Haven't really beat
Chiefs,
a good team yet,
right?
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I feel like that offense is not one I would ever want to see in a playoff game, like in a do or die situation.
It brings back to your point about style points, though. The way that they have beat up on some of these bad teams, and you could say this about the Cowboys too in the NFC. I haven't really beat a good team, but the way they beat up on teams, you can see it, because even if you face a good team, if that good team's not on its game that Sunday, you could really rack up some points and you could really cause some problems.
Well, and they got the guys at the right positions too, right? You got a game breaker wide receiver. I think Achane, like I said, game breaker running back. They've got one of the top cover corners in the NFL who's back from his injury now, and they've got good pass rushers. Like, I think that team could beat anybody if it's on top of its game. They haven't done it yet. They haven't beat the really good teams yet, but I think they could make some noise in the AFC.
Yeah. No, I think somebody who's down in this 4 and 5 list is going to make the playoffs, but I don't think they're really contenders. But the Dolphins, I think you could say are, along with maybe Jaguars, Ravens, Chiefs, obviously, and then maybe throw the Bengals in there. And if you're feeling generous, the Bills, but they got a lot of work to do. So we'll see. Rod, what was your Super Bowl pick before the season, and are you sticking with it?
What was my
I can't remember. I wanted to do this, but now I'm having trouble.
I think I picked. I don't know if I picked the Eagles or the 49ers. I think I picked the Eagles or the 49ers to win it. I can't remember which NFC team it was, but
You're in pretty good shape with either one of those
yeah,
teams.
I don't know who I had.
Well, what's your pick now? Let's do that.
My pick now would be Philadelphia, and I'm gonna go to Super Bowl rematch, Philadelphia and Kansas City.
But Philly wins this time.
Philly wins this time.
All
I
right.
think that's what that is what my pick
Okay.
was.
Luke, how about you?
I had Bengals and Eagles. I can't remember who I picked to win out of those two. I still feel pretty good about that. I think the Bengals are going to really come on strong in the closing stretch of the season here. And I don't know. Part of me wants to pick San Francisco because I think they've shown themselves to be the most dominant team at times in the NFL this year. But Philly just keeps finding ways to win, and I think they've got that experience from last year is going to help them. So I think I feel pretty good about my preseason pick still.
And I had Bengals beating the Cowboys, and I still feel pretty good about that. If I could change,
as long as Dallas doesn't have to play San Francisco.
Yeah. If I could change, I think I would actually take the Ravens at this point. And this is before seeing them play Thursday. When that team's been healthy, they've been awesome up until that fourth quarter Sunday, which is maybe let their foot off the gas, maybe had a couple fluky plays. I don't know. I mean, they're obviously not that much better than everybody else, but they have been really good when healthy.
Yeah, I agree. They were, I think, the closest looking thing to a juggernaut in the AFC until last week.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to do it for today's edition of the Saints Insider Podcast. It's sponsored by Bank Plus. We will be back with you on Friday on these same channels. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends about us. Our channel is growing, and we want you to grow with us. And we're going to keep working through the bye week. We'll be back Friday. We'll talk the NFC. We'll do some more Saints report cards. Jeff Duncan and Matthew Parrish will be here. And then the whole crew will be back next week to preview Saints Falcons. For Rod Walker and Luke Johnson, Norman Bell behind the glass, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching.